Howdy, y'all. It's Friday.
Friday.
Yeah, there you go. Roxy said you had something to start the show.
I do? Oh, yeah, I do. So yesterday the Eagles had their parade, and it went really well. And I watched it on television, and, Jason Kelce was like the stereotypical WWE wrestler, whatever you want to call it. It was just weird. It was almost like the president from Idiocracy.
Okay.
It was just like, that's what it was like. But that's fine. If it made everybody happy, that's cool. But Jeffrey Lurie, who started things off, one of the first, gave a really good speech, but he made a huge error in his speech.
Uh-oh.
And he basically said, like this is just the start of it. This is just the beginning. Never say that. Now you've just lit a fire for Bill Belichick. Like, I get that you're the center of the football universe for, a couple more days and you are champions, but now you've put the gauntlet down, and you never want to ever challenge yourself publicly to win the next championship. Internally, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, did he say that, or did he say this is just the beginning, like we can win more championships?
Well, that's what the inference is. When you say
it doesn't mean next year. It could mean 2-3 years from now.
Okay, but again, it's a superior, lofty goal that in the NFL has proved to be almost impossible, except if you're the Patriots.
He's feeling his oats. You know what I'm saying? He's in the moment, and he's hoping for the best. I thought. See, when you said he made an error, I thought you said he was going to say, "Yeah, I'm going to go out for a cheesesteak and put Swiss cheese on it."
Yeah, well, that's fine. I mean, again, that's his prerogative. Otherwise, it was pretty well done, and actually, the city cleared out. I was able to get to the Flyers game very easy. So the city did really well with it yesterday. Yeah,
and I saw that you posted on either Facebook or Instagram that they already have the big banner slapped up against the
for the Wells Fargo.
Yeah,
and the green above the top, because everybody's got those lights now that they could, the LEDs that they could do something with, put in different colors, and so theirs is in green today.
Yeah, it's funny because even during in the day when the Bills were actually making Super Bowls and losing, there was a lot of signage. There was a lot of pride because four-time AFC champions, and now the only thing that you see, I'm sure you've seen this a million times, and I don't really exactly know what the reference to this is, but you've been to Buffalo enough times that when you're driving in on the thruway and it says welcome to Buffalo, an all-America city.
Yeah, that's this. It always rubs me the wrong way every time.
I'm like, what the hell? What the hell? Of course, it's all America. It's in the United States. You can say that about any friggin' city.
Yeah, that gets me. I also do need to do this. I need to throw down the gauntlet for the Vegas Golden Knights Twitter person. Because yesterday they posted.
What do you do now?
We don't know if it's a he or a she, do we?
I think it's a he.
Okay, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
They posted Timo Meyer, like they just said, Meyer just scored for them. What? My phone just turned off. We haven't been this disappointed in someone named Timo since Game 1 of the 2000 World Series. You have now opened up Pandora's box there, my friend, because you have now challenged Met fans to start challenging you on Twitter.
You've challenged all 6 Mets fans.
Yeah. 6, maybe like 3 million.
Yeah, I know.
And that's the thing. And so now you've challenged Met fans to now troll you on Twitter. So get ready for it, Vegas Golden Knights. That's what happens.
Aren't the Mets AAA team? Aren't they in Vegas?
Not anymore.
Oh, they moved. Where'd they go to now?
Where did they move to? They've been moving around. I want to say they're in New Orleans now.
Okay. They used to be in Buffalo. That was a nice hop, skip.
Then they went to Vegas. Then they moved out of Vegas, and I think it's New Orleans now.
I have to say, though, and then we'll get started with the show. I have to say that, especially during the summer, we don't have a major league team here, and there's not one close. The Blue Jays are the closest. I don't consider them major league.
You had your chance. Yeah. That was back in the – no, you did.
I'm just kidding, Toronto fans.
But you had your chance at a Major League Baseball team back before the Mets came in. That was your chance.
Well, and they got screwed out of it.
They
got screwed out of it. Well, not back before the Mets. It was in '69. They got screwed.
No. They tried it before the Mets.
Yeah.
They tried again in '69 when I guess the Expos came in, right?
It was San Diego and Montreal, and apparently Buffalo was in, and they didn't get in. But then in the '80s, they built the current AAA stadium basically as an expandable that if they got a major league team, they could slap a roof on or slap an extra deck on there. It's still a very nice AAA ballpark, probably one of the nicer ones in North America, but. I think the one thing that's beneficial is Toronto has their AAA team right down the QEW. It's right. The trend in not only in Major League Baseball but in the NHL of having your minor league franchise extremely close. It's very beneficial. I mean, the Yankees have theirs in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. The Leafs in the NHL have theirs right down the road at Ricoh Coliseum, Rochester, and Buffalo.
Have theirs across the street. Now it's about 45 minutes away, but still.
Yeah, I was going to say how far is Lehigh Valley? It's not that far.
It's like 40 minutes, I think, from the Wells Fargo.
Yeah, which is about the same distance, or same amount of time it takes to get from the Ricoh Coliseum to.
But I did want to say about the baseball thing.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll repost it, but the legendary Bob Swados is the one who gave me the inside dirt on all of it. Because he was involved with baseball, obviously the Sabres. Yeah, this guy was a legend.
Yeah, he was part of the ownership group of the original Sabres franchise with the Knox brothers.
Yeah.
So
he helped smuggle in McGillney, all that.
Yes, and again, we were talking about that. There is a story that should be told as a major motion picture.
It should be a picture. It should be.
It should be. It would be great. Okay. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, February 9th, 2018.
And for the second consecutive week, I'm Russ Cohen without a bottom third. Thanks, Google. It just doesn't work anymore.
Oh, okay. I'm Michael Lagello, and this is Hockey Buzzcast. This is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com.
Are you not going to answer the question? Does your bottom third work, Mike?
I haven't tried.
No, it doesn't work. That's the
answer. And when I log in as Ack, because I have to do that for the show,
I get an error now. I get an error.
Yeah. So, okay. Sorry. Just to start where we started yesterday, the 3 waiver names on waivers from yesterday: Brendan Smith, Marcus Kruger, and Josh Juris, all cleared. Not surprisingly. I was taken a little by surprise at the column that Larry Brooks wrote in today's New York Post regarding Smith, that basically this was done as a wake-up call because apparently how he described it was, Smith got married this previous summer and went to like 7 weddings. And
that's the extra weight I told you about.
Yeah, and didn't devote himself at the gym. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, wouldn't you have known that before? They signed him on July 1st, didn't they? Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I go back to, this is the problem sometimes when the Rangers sign players. This is not the Rangers' fault. This is the fault of New York and having a first-class organization and a player thinking, oh, I made it. Now I could sort of, take my foot off the gas pedal a little bit. And that's what he did. And he's not the kind of player that's good enough to do that.
Yeah, and now he's going to go down to Hartford and –
and he's going to live the Hartford life.
Yeah, well, and from what Brooks is saying is basically this is the wake-up call. Now, essentially, you're going to probably spend the rest of the year down there, or at least, a part of the year until maybe after the deadline when if they clear out some bodies, they may need him to come back. But they're expecting him to contribute next year.
And they'll give Elias Anderson a chance to work on the PK for the penalties that he'll commit.
Now,
come on, Mike, that's a good joke. You didn't even get that. Nobody gets more lazy tripping penalties than Brendan Smith in the NHL.
Yes. No. So now I know that you wanted to talk about the sort of the reaction to the letter, the now infamous Rangers letter that came out yesterday. Honestly, like, and I have heard other shows debate it, whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. I saw Jeff Gorton, the Rangers general manager, be interviewed on one of the New York radio stations, and I think the reaction that I've heard has been generally positive in terms of the fact that the organization is looking to do a reset, and them being open about floating this as what they're going to do to their fans and maybe to some of the players is a good thing. But what do you think?
Well, I'm a little more plugged in. Like, a lot of different fans contacted me, and I've seen a lot of different things as well as you have. And so they've literally split the Rangers fan base in thirds. The first third is, yes, we like what you're saying, do it. Okay, that's a simple one. The second third is, we will believe it when we see it, and we're incredibly insulted that you're now trying to tell us the day after you send out renewals for your season tickets that this is your plan, and it has sort of been your plan all along, when – the Jets said the same thing after they spent a lot of money and it didn't work out, right? So this hasn't been the plan all along. This is like, I know Gorton has been trying to get younger. That's true, but not to this degree, right? So that's where some fans felt that it was a little disingenuous. And then there's the other fans that say, I don't want Henrik Lundqvist to go anywhere. I don't want Ryan McDonough to go anywhere. You're only 3 points out. What the hell are you doing? So let's break it down. So I'll tell you which side I'm on, because I told every side of this story, but I haven't really said which side I'm on. I'm on side 4, which I don't believe is happening, and that would be a complete rebuild. That is what's being skirted around here, and that's why I've been saying for the last couple of days on shows that I've been on, unless you're including Henrik Lundqvist in this, you're really not tearing it down. You're just, you're remodeling your old bathroom and hoping to get the most out of it. That's what you do.
Well, I mean, that is a good point. And the thing is, and the only thing I can compare it to, because is what happened with the Maple Leafs in 2014, 2015, when they realized it was a little earlier. It was late December, early January that, they were in a playoff spot at that point when they fired Randy Carlyle. And basically within 2 weeks of that point, we know this from good reporting from some of the Toronto reporters, that Brendan Shanahan went to the MLSE board and said, we've got to he wanted to tear it down at the start of the season, and they said, no, we've got Kessel, we've got Phaneuf, this team can make the playoffs. And then when they went into this slump in December and they fired Carlyle, he says, okay, we got to change this. We got to clean this team out. There's a bunch of players on this team that just are never going to win. Individually, they're very talented, but as a collective group, they suck. We've got to blow this thing up. And they started doing it in February and before the deadline, and then over the next summer and the next season as they whittled away and traded Kessel and Phaneuf and other players. The thing with Lundqvist, and this is, I don't know whether this is a full bottom-out rebuild. This might be what they want to do is a quick retool or reset or whatever. But if you have Lundqvist, he really prevents you from being able to get down and get a couple premium top 5 draft picks, guys who, if you get lucky, can be that franchise cornerstone. I mean, that's where the Leafs benefited. Over 3 years, they got Nylander, they got 8th overall, they got Marner 4th overall, they lucked out, they won the lottery, and they drafted Matthews first. If you have Lundqvist on his own, Russ, is going to win 20 to 25 games because he's a great goaltender. And if you don't get rid of him, then you mitigate your ability to get those really talented players in the draft.
Right. And that is my big problem with this, is that we're just coming up with names. Reset, redo, but it's not a rebuild.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. So if the Leafs didn't win the first overall, we don't know if this would have been as successful as it is, because Austin Matthews was a generational player. So there is a generational player this year, but the Rangers are doing this too late to expect to get first overall. They're not going to get first overall. The odds are way against them.
Unless they get really lucky and win the lottery, yeah. Or get in.
Again,
yeah.
You can't do a business plan for this and hoping on luck, right? So this is really more for next year, maybe for the Jack Hughes, but then you've got to bottom out. You can't bottom out with Henrik Lundqvist there. And so that is the big problem here. So now we're basically, and the Rangers have, the one thing that they have going for them is if they annoy you as a fan or as a season ticket holder, and there are plenty of them now that said they're not going to re-up, they got people to replace you.
Yeah.
And they may not be hardened season ticket holders. They may be people that go for 5 games, and then there's companies that just send different people all the time, and that's the nature of the Garden business lately. And so that's the other factor is they're not going to lose business over this.
No, they're not. But I mean,
they could lose playoff revenue if they don't make the playoffs, but that's it.
Unfortunately, in terms of Gorton and Sather, their hands are tied because Lundqvist has a no move. So if he wants to stay, he can. I heard I don't remember where it was, but I heard somebody talking about, well, if you look at the Islanders, I mean, Lundqvist wouldn't have to move, and they could trade him to the Islanders, and the Islanders are in need of a goaltender. It's like, okay, if this is EA Sports or Stratomatic, it's easy to make that deal. But we're talking about
the Islanders are giving the Rangers full value for Henrik Lundqvist. I'm going to say 0.
Right. Now, the thing is that.
And here's another good thing. Sorry to interrupt. From the chat room, right? Hey, they're clearing room for Tavares. They're clearing room. If they're clearing room for Tavares, there's a 30% chance they're going to get Tavares. Right. So again, it's not a good business plan if that's what they're clearing. And I'm going to tell you one other thing that was on the letter that makes it a little confusing. Glenn Sather signed it along with Jeff Gordon, which we kept getting the message, hey, Glenn Sather's the president, but he's stepping back. He's going to be in the background. You can't be in the background if you're on that letter. Right.
No. I mean, he's part of it. He's as much part of the picture in New York as I think Brian Burke is in Calgary. He's president. Right. But I think he still has a say-so in hockey operations.
Correct. That's also part of the mix, and this is a mix that is not easy to figure out. And to be honest, I think fans would believe it a lot more if Rick Nash were traded tomorrow, and there's no reason he can't be.
Well, I mean, again, I keep going back to the parallels. I mean, clearing out space for Tavares is like the Leafs clearing out space for Stamkos. There's no guarantee that Tavares is coming to the Rangers, just like there was no guarantee that Stamkos was coming to Toronto, no matter what you heard. I mean, it was a situation, and in retrospect, they had just drafted Matthews, and I think there was no way to know that the Leafs would turn around this quick. So, if there's any Monday morning quarterbacking here or regret on the part of Stamkos, you're never going to know about it. I don't think there is because the Lightning are so good and so talented to have a chance to win the Cup over the next couple of years. Tavares and the Rangers, with them stripping down, if they do, I think that lessens the chances of Tavares coming because he's going to want to go to a situation where he can win, and it's one train wreck or the other. And if he goes from the Islanders to the Rangers,
somebody HD asked me in the chat room, what would full value be for Lundqvist? It'd be a first-round pick, it'd be a top prospect, and a player off the roster.
Well, let's talk about that because we were talking about that before the show about the value of goaltenders, because if you look at it right now, the bang for the buck that teams are getting on top goalies, I mean, Tuukka Rask, I believe, is in the $7 million range. He's having a great year. Bobrovsky's making over $7 million. Let's see. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury is at 5.75 for Vegas. Frederik Andersen for Toronto is making $5 million. Now, Lundqvist is on a probable non-playoff team. He's making over $8 million. Now, Carey Price is on a non-playoff team in Montreal, whose deal, his 8-year extension, kicks in next year at $10.5 million. The landscape here is, pay your goalies and pay them well, but you can't pay them too much.
Right. And that's definitely a trend now. Example, all the guys you mentioned, only one's won the Stanley Cup on his own, playing for his team. Now, Fleury's won more than one because he was also the backup. Tuukka Rask hasn't won a cup.
Well, as a backup, he did. I think he was
a backup, but not on his own. Remember, I said
not on his own. Not on his own.
And so this is a thing now where you're looking at two goalie systems like what you saw in Pittsburgh last year with Martin and Fleury being very successful. You're looking at like the Eagles situation. Carson Wentz sort of got him there, and Nick Foles took him to the finish line. I think you're going to see more of this, and Lundqvist will be an exception out if they trade him at this deadline, because his value will never be higher than at this deadline. Because there's going to be a couple teams out there that say, hey, if we get him, we could actually win the Stanley Cup, as opposed to flat-footed at the draft, let's say.
I mean, the trend hasn't gone back yet, but I think
it's going that way.
It is going that way. But the thing is, though, I mean, right now you still have, Mike Smith is going to play 70 games. Freddie Anderson's on pace to play, I think, 67 or 68. There are teams that are going, like, they're only starting their backups in the second of back-to-backs.
Sure. For now. I think it's going to lessen when injuries rise, and I think that's why you're not going to see guys get much more than Freddie Anderson, so they can have another goalie back there that does make good money. Like the Islanders have that going for them, but they're the wrong two goalies. That's the problem with the Islanders.
Yeah, they don't have a 1A. They have two 1Bs. You could get away with Halak or Grice being the second goalie and playing 30. I mean, the NHL is cyclical. I mean, back in the 80s, remember, the Buffalo pairing of Bob Sauvé and Don Edwards, they played 40 games each. They shared their shared duties. Now, like I think we were talking about Pete Peters, the 1 year that he had with Boston. That I think it was in the early '80s. I'm pretty sure like the number 2 goalie at that point was somebody like Reggie Lemelin, and he played a bunch of games. Even the Islanders, when Billy Smith was there, I mean, at first it was Chico Resch, then Rolly Melanson played a bunch of games.
Well, even just as practically as successful. In the 70s, you had Gilles Villemure and Eddie Joachim, and they won a Vezina.
Fuhr and Moog in Edmonton. I mean, there is a history of that, but then it got to the point now where you're paying the number 1 goalie so much that A, you can't afford to pay the backup enough, and B, you want to get your money's worth, so you're going to start them a bunch of games. I mean, I think it's counterproductive for a team like Montreal to play Price a ton of games the way they did a couple of years ago, because it contributed to, I think, his maybe his lack of durability or his propensity for getting hurt. Yeah. And I know, like, right now in the minor, and this is in the minor leagues, like with the Toronto Marlies, they have Garrett Sparks, and they picked up Calvin Pickard from Vegas, and they've been split in time, and they're the team is very good, and their goals against are very good, but it's not like one is a number 1 and the other one's the backup. I mean, their workload has been split right down the middle. And if you've got the goaltending like that, it's fine. But, some of these teams that have these big goaltenders who play a lot of games, if they lose that number 1, I mean, Pittsburgh was the exception to the rule. You lose Murray, you get Fleury, and there's no drop off there. You lose Braden Holtby and you go to Grubauer, Washington was done.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I think that's going to start to change. Now, getting back to the Lundqvist full value, what did you think of what I think is Lundqvist full value?
It was a first-round pick,
top prospect, and a roster player.
Ideally, that's right there. But the problem is the team being able to fit his $8.25 million salary.
Maybe that's where the roster player you're getting back,
right?
Makes some money.
Yeah, if the roster player is a quasi salary dump rather than like a young player who's going to be really, I'm saying, like a young player who's going to be really good and a prospect.
You're going to have to use that roster player, right? If they're this rebuilding team that's starting over, they're going to have to use that roster player anyhow.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I mean, it has to be a team that is the goalie away from winning. Right. And I mean, I think Philadelphia
is another team. They are.
Philadelphia fits that. The Islanders fit that. St. Louis
might fit that.
Yeah. So I mean, there are more than a few teams out there. Yeah. I mean, it's plausible, but I don't know. I mean, do you get the feeling that because he's made statements over the last few weeks, it doesn't sound like he wants to go anywhere.
Well, he doesn't want to go. Like Rick Nash doesn't want to go. Like Ryan McDonough's not even talking, right? I told you he wasn't going to say anything. He's not saying a word. So nobody wants to go, right?
But the difference is Lundqvist has a no move. He has the hammer.
He has the hammer. He does. But again, are you going to have Henrik Lundqvist in front of a full rebuilding team? That's where my skepticism comes in, and I think it's fair to have it.
No, and again, this is the dilemma that Toronto faced a decade ago.
That's why I think only 2 or 3 guys are getting traded, and that's it.
Right. It was beneficial for them, for Matt Sundin to drop his no trade clause and allow himself to be traded someplace else so they could get assets. And if he wanted to come back, fine. He wouldn't do it. Some people think it was because he was told by the PA not to do it. Some people think he was just being Matt's. Yeah. And he's still very popular in Toronto, but at that point when I was just a fan, I was like, this sucks, because the organization has paid the guy $60 million over like the last 7 or 8 years, and all you're asking for is to live out of a suitcase for 2 months. Right. And he wouldn't do it. Now the thing with Lundqvist has got 4 years left in the contract. And I know we've talked about this on the show where, you think, and it's very plausible, that maybe he ends his career back in Sweden and he doesn't want to play for somebody else. Well, if the Rangers are forcing him out, in a sense, to do a rebuild.
He could just leave. That's true.
He could just leave, yeah.
That is always an option, and that would be something that would probably not sit very well with Ranger fans, the same way when Brian Leetch got traded under the Glenn Sader regime. That still bugs Brian Leetch. I've talked to him about it. He's moved on, but it still bugs him. There's still something about that.
And they really didn't get anything for him. They got Jarkko Immonen, a first-round pick, and it was a lot. It was a collection of nothing basically for Leetch. And if
and Jarkko Immonen, I think, was playing in the Champions League game the other day on NHL Network. So there you go.
Yeah, and I mean, that was I believe that was 2004. If the Leafs hadn't gotten hurt, they might have gotten a little further in the. But
here's the challenge on the McDonough part, right?
Yeah. So
people are assuming McDonough because he's got a year left on his deal.
Right.
Being captain doesn't mean anything. Rangers trade captains all the time. Forget that, and teams do now anyhow. Mm-hmm. That's not it. What I say is replacement value. So let's just say we use Calgary as an example. Mm-hmm. So is Calgary giving a first-round pick in TJ Brody? Because that's what they're going to have to give.
Yeah, I mean, but see, I mean,
and Brian Burke would love Ryan McDonough. If you talk to Brian Burke, he would say he's all in on Ryan McDonough. I guarantee.
Well, I was going to say let's play general manager here, because David Pagnotta, a fourth period, reported. I think it was last night, that the Boston Bruins and the Tampa Bay Lightning, if Brian McDonough is legitimately being shopped, would be in on a potential deal. Let's throw Toronto in just for shits and giggles.
Right, because everybody throws the Yankees in a deal in baseball.
Yeah, sure. And we'll take it because Larry Brooks wrote a couple weeks ago regarding the potential of the Leafs being interested in McDonough, and he floated the name of William Nylander, which I'm sure made everybody guffaw at 40 Bay Street in Toronto. But okay, let's take those 3 teams and let's start with Boston. If you're Jeff Gorton and you're looking at the Boston Bruins and their organization, and you're looking for the package that you would expect to get for Ryan McDonough, who's 28, who's got 1 year left at less than $5 million per, and you would add him to that defense of Carlo, McAvoy, Chara, McQuaid, Grizzly.
Hold on, time out. Yeah. I'm only doing it if Carlo's in the deal.
Okay. So, see that, and then there you go, and that's.
I know McAvoy's off limits, right? But now I'm going to Carlo. Carlo's got to be in the deal.
I see that. This okay, and this, like, if I'm Sweeney, I'm not giving up Carlo. I'm not giving up Krug. I'm not giving up McAvoy.
And I'm not making a deal. Like, I'm
right. Exactly.
They want me to make this deal for forwards, and I'm not doing it.
Well, no. What I think, like, I think Boston would be on board with saying,
even if you give me Vakanainen, he's still years away. It's and I'm rolling the dice now.
I think the deal would be something like Zaboral and a number 1 and something.
Yeah. Did you hear that click?
Yeah, I know. now Tampa.
Going back to the trade for Phil Esposito and this franchise, I would have clicked you 5 minutes ago.
Right.
If I was the GM. But anyhow.
Now, okay, so Gordon gets a call from Steve Yzerman, and Steve Yzerman will now, okay, if you're Gordon, what are you looking for from Tampa?
Okay, so if I'm looking for Tampa, I've got to get a forward like of the Tyler Johnson value. So Tyler Johnson or Nemestikov, one of those guys. It's got to be a value guy, and I'd probably rather I would take either one. I would take either one of those guys, and then I am going to take one of the good defensemen off your roster.
Okay. I think they would give up a Cuckoo.
It depends who the forward is to see if I'm going to do that or not.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I don't think they're going to give up any of, first of all, any of John Cooper's favorite guys.
Defenseman, a guy who is a leader. If you're not giving me that, why am I trading him?
Well, I think that, and this is where I'm wondering where the Rangers are going here, because if it's simply, you know, I mean, a deal like what you're suggesting is more something that would happen during the summer because teams can adjust and teams can make other additions to make up for the guys that they give up. But right now, if you're trading a McDonough, these teams don't want to get, like, Boston doesn't want to give up Brandon Carlo. Yeah. You know, the Tampa Bay Lightning do not want to give up Tyler Johnson, who's their number 2 center, even though they have Braden Point, who's very capable.
Give me Johnson and Sergachev, I'll do it.
Yeah, there's no there's
but that's what I want.
Right? No, I understand. I understand it, and if I was in the position of Gordon, that's what I would ask for. And then, you know, again, it's the opposite of Yzerman clicking and hanging up.
But I'll settle for Nemestikov and Sergachev. If Sergachev's not in the deal,
he's not going to be in the deal.
If Cuckoo's in the deal, then it's Braden Point.
Yeah, no, I think
again, I'm giving you a first pairing defenseman, and by the way, Steve, I already gave you Dan Girardi at a discount. Click.
Not really. You just bought him out. That's all you did.
Yeah, well, I bought him out, and then you picked him up at a discount.
Now, okay. So with Toronto, I think they would be asking for probably a Liljegren.
Yeah.
And probably their first round pick in 2018 or 2019. And at that point, I think Lou hangs up. Because, you know, the talk about a Nylander or a Marner is so cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs that it's I mean, from the Toronto's perspective, especially like if it was McDonough signed to a long-term deal, then I would think that there would be something there. But there's no guarantees, and with the market, the way it's going to be in the summer of 2019 with Carlson and Doughty and Ekman Larson and McDonough, I don't see any of these guys unless they're getting paid what they think they're going to get on the open market. I don't see any of them signing unless they really love where they are.
Yeah, this is why this exercise is what proves to me that you're not in a good position trying to trade Ryan McDonough. You're not.
Not right now. In the summer, you might be, because
I don't even know if in the summer you are. I think you're better off re-signing him, because again, he's not an old man.
No,
yes, he has some mileage. He is playing injured this year.
Right.
He had abdominal stuff going on. You don't count this year as what you think Ryan McDonough is, because that's going to be a mistake that fans do. And I'm telling you, he'll go somewhere else fully healthy, and you'll wish you had Ryan McDonough again.
Right. I mean, I think McDonough is a top 10 NHL defenseman, and you know, I that's why I think so many teams would want him, and you're going to be able to you know, ask for a king's ransom. But at this point, at this part of the season, I don't think teams that are contending are willing to weaken themselves in one area just to add another piece. I mean, it's sort of.
That's why this letter was sort of ill-timed. This would be a better letter for over the summer.
Well, I mean, I think the letter is not ill-timed in the sense that I think it eliminates the perception that they're going to keep Nash, that they're going to keep Grabner.
I don't think anybody thought they were keeping Nash, though, unless they made a big run for the playoffs, and that just happens by accident. But I don't think anybody thought that they were necessarily keeping Nash.
I think this letter was basically, if you know, for all of you who don't know it, we're selling. Send me your offers.
Right.
That's what it was. It was just an announcement. Now
But it's like, your mom's house in Boca Raton. She says she's selling. She could be there 5 more years.
True. And I don't think, I don't think that they're going to trade Lundqvist. I'm not sure if they're going to even entertain trading guys like Zuccarello. I mean, JT Miller, he's gone back from center to the wing. I mean, there's potential there. I mean,
hang on. Thomas Smith says the Rangers might take Yanni Gord, Cuckoo, and a prospect for McDonough. If that prospect isn't Adam Ern or somebody who is
Cal Foot. Yeah, Cal Foot.
I'm hanging up.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, that's not happening. Interesting quote from Ken Hitchcock yesterday. The Stars played the Chicago Blackhawks. The Stars won. They swept the season series against the Blackhawks, and a reporter asked whether Hitchcock had some empathy for Quenneville and his plight right now with the Hawks struggling the way they are. And he says, empathize with Joe Quenneville. He can give me his ring. He can give me his rings all he wants. I don't give a damn. Competition is competition. He's had his day in the sun. He's a great coach, but you can't feel for anybody.
Listen, I love Ken Hitchcock. He's one of the great quotes in hockey. What he's saying is the heart of a coach that wants to win one more time, and I don't blame him.
Yeah, neither do I. We're going to take some questions in the chat. So send them in. I just had this somebody.
Right, here's the first question.
Go ahead,
Mike. How much did you pay for that shirt? Nobody asked that. I'm just kidding.
$4 and a bowl of soup. No, this was interesting on Reddit. Before we send in your questions, we'll answer as many as we can in the next 20 minutes or so. I always like going through Reddit and finding these little lists of things that people put together, and it's a little interesting. And you can give a little bit of a proper perspective now after say a year and a half. The 2016 UFA class, and I believe these were the 8 top salaries in that class and how they're doing so far with their current teams. Okay, Kyle Oposo signed a 7-year, $42 million contract. So that's $6 million AAV with the Sabres. The Sabres are the second worst team in the NHL. The only team worse is Arizona. And in 51 games, and after an injury-plagued year last year, in 51 games, and this is not counting yesterday, he has 9 goals and 22 assists for 31 points. David Backes, so I think has generally been considered a success with the Bruins. He's been added to that existing group. He's had some injury problems, but he's come back from that. 5 years, $30 million, so $6 million per.
Right.
35 games, same amount of goals as Oposo, 9 goals, 12 assists, 21 points.
The only difference is Okposo's coming off that serious health condition, and he'll be a lot better than Backes next year. Right,
but Backes with the Bruins, where they're going right now, I mean, he's a good player right now, but you're right, 2 or 3 years from now, and the Oposo's like 4 or 5 years younger than him, I believe.
At least.
I think Backes is 32 or 33, and I think Oposo is 28 or 29. Louis Eriksson, and this is the one that made me shake my head because Vancouver should have been rebuilding, which they're sort of doing now.
Yeah, we all shook our head at the Louis Eriksson deal.
Yeah, 6 years, $36 million, $6 million per, 41 games, 8 goals, 12 assists for 20 points. And I'm not sure, is he still on the line with the Sedins? I don't know. Yeah,
I haven't watched the Vancouver game in weeks.
Yeah, here arguably is the worst one of them all.
Okay.
Milan Lucic, 7 years, $42 million, $6 million per, 52 games. He scored over 20 goals last year, 52 games, 9 goals, 21 assists for 30 points.
Yeah, that's one where you give a nod of the cap to the agent.
Yeah, and that's one where when you're firing Peter Chiarelli, and I'm not saying that's going to happen at the end of the season, but when you are, that's on the first line of his hockey obituary.
Yeah, no question.
Franz Nielsen, 6 years, $5.25 million with Detroit. Again, a team that probably should have been rebuilding, but was trying to, one last kick at the can or at least remain competitive. 52 games, 12 goals, 8 assists, 20 points.
But he's great on the PK, Mike.
Oh, God.
Islander fans will remind you of that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Oh, speaking of Islanders fans, Andrew Ladd, 7 years, $5.5 million per season in 45 games this year. And after a terrible year last year where he started to play well only in the last, I think it was 25 games. Yeah. This year, 45 games, 9 goals, 12 assists, 21. It seems like the same amount, 9 goals, 12 assists for all these guys.
Yeah, this is when guys – I was telling somebody, a photographer, this yesterday. In this league, within the last couple of years, this is what I've noticed, and it changes every year or two. That's how the quantum leaps are happening now. You lose one or two things. As an offensive player, you either lose a little bit of speed, and then that's what is setting your game back, or you lose a little bit of reaction time on your shot, and that's what sets your game back. Because how many seconds do you have to take a shot in the NHL, even if you're open? You've got like 1.5 seconds and someone's putting their stick in there. Everybody's trained to get in your way now, right? Yeah. So if you're just a little bit slower on the reaction time, like a Rick Nash, you don't get as many goals anymore. Right. And that's the thing. And everybody's playing a defensive system. So until that changes, it's either that or it's a little bit of speed, like in the case of Lucic and Eriksson and Nielsen and those guys. They never were the fastest guys to begin with.
Right.
They just did other things well. But now you have to do one of those two things well to be an effective offensive player in the NHL. And, almost everybody has to be fast. And that's the problem now with aging at all in the NHL. Really. Yes.
And just to finish off the list here, Troy Brouwer, Calgary, 4 years, $4.5 million. That was a signing to bring character and experience to a young Calgary team.
Room, Mike.
What's that?
He's good in the room, Mike.
Yeah, 4 years, $4.5 million per, 53 games, 3 goals, 12 assists for 15 points. Yep. And finally, Michael Bodker, who had a terrible first year with San Jose, 4 years, $4 million per. This year, 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points in 45 games. Yeah. So, the most of all those players was 12 goals with Franz Nielsen. The most was 31 points with Opozo. And I out of all 8 of them, I don't think that any of them are giving the bang for the buck that the teams that signed them thought they were going to get.
Yeah. All right. So first question from Thomas: would the Rangers accept Wayne Simmons, a first-round pick, and a prospect for Lundqvist? I think they would accept Wayne Simmons, a first-round pick, and Travis Sanheim for Lundqvist. Is Ron Hextall doing that deal?
No. The Flyers. The Flyers are going to stop gap until Carter Hart is their goalie.
Right.
So
Lundqvist's contract runs a little further than that. Yeah, they made that mistake before the Flyers signed Bridge-Galloff. That was,
Yeah, I mean, this is, and I'm not saying Thomas is wrong here. I understand
the thinking's right.
I understand the point of view of the fan, but the thing is that I don't think that the Flyers are of a mindset that they think that they can win right now. So they're not of a mindset to trade a young asset, a first-round pick, and another prospect, plus arguably their best or second best forward for a goaltender as a win now proposition, because I don't think they're ready to win now.
Right. This is a statement. Somebody wrote, Cap Friendly just said a Rangers trade is imminent. And that's just like saying the sun will come up tomorrow. Like that's, what are they really telling us here?
What is this, Annie? The sun will come up tomorrow?
I'm not singing it, but yeah, essentially. All right. My singing voice sucks.
Yes, mine is great, but I need to be paid to sing.
All right, so here's a good one. This is from Vepsis. I don't know what kind of name that is. Is that a car? Is that a disease?
That's a Vespa. That's a Vespa.
It sounds like a disease. Or when Snow came out to the media and saying he won't be trading high draft picks for rentals, will this influence positively or negatively to his chances to get Tavares re-signed? I think it positive in the sense that he's not going to rob the future, and I think negatively in the sense that he's not bringing over much talent by not doing that. So I think he's at a wash point with Tavares for that.
See, this is the thing I don't understand. You can go out and make deals to improve this team because you have a boatload. I mean, they're a deep organization in terms of prospects.
Yes.
You know, you've got Del Cole, you've got Beauvillier, you've got Ho-Sang. I mean, Ho-Sang's a problem child, but he's very talented, and maybe there's a team out there, Buffalo, that might be willing to trade somebody on their existing roster, like a Robin Leonard, who would help them in goal, for a guy like a Ho-Sang, who is an exciting player who just, I think, needs a fresh start. Those are deals you can make without affecting the future of your team. I mean, I don't know whether Ho-Sang really factors into the future of the Islanders, but you got to be proactive here. If you don't do something and you miss the playoffs, I think Tavares is walking away.
I don't know if he's walking away. I still think it's 70-30, 60-40 that he signed.
Right. I want 99-1. I want to be sure.
They're not at 99-1. There's no way you can be. And so that's why they're going to have to – Islander fans and the Islanders ownership are going to have to sweat it out. I was just told John Gilmore was called up. Listen, if you think John Gilmore is the savior for the Rangers, that's fine. But they're basically saying, well, that's how a trade is imminent because – John Gilmore got called up. Well, if they trade Ryan McDonough tomorrow, then I'll say you were right. I think they're still trying to just plug holes because they brought up Neil Pionk also.
I think there's a better chance that they're trading Nick Holden than they are Ryan McDonough right now.
I think Nick Holden's the one that, yes, you would look to see him gone. But this says, what about, my thoughts on Stahl? And Stahl is on the IR. What are my thoughts? I think he's going to stay on the IR because he's got a cervical injury and he's already had concussion issues. And then they're going to cross their fingers that he can come back next year so that if they are in this rebuild mode, they could actually trade him. He's got zero value right now.
Right. I mean, the only value he might have, and I hope for the best in terms of him because
he's a great guy.
I like him as a player. But if he's out for the remainder of his career, I mean, there would be value in trading his contract, like Mark Savard got traded, or like Chris Pronger got traded, or like Pavel Datsyuk got traded. So there's going to be value there, whether he's healthy or not healthy, because there are teams that are going to want to be able to get to the bottom, get to the cap floor. So I mean, one way or the other, we were talking about the fact that at the beginning of the season when they thought that there was a possibility of Stahl being bought out, like Girardi was bought out, but I don't, who knows if that's going to happen.
So Dan D. says he's saying, Russ, wonder if the Devils will make any more moves. Missing Schneider is killing them right now. Of course. I mean, they, Kincaid and whoever else you throw
Blackwood.
Or look, or Appleby, if they're going to throw him back in there at some point. Nobody can replace Corey Schneider right now for them. He's got to get back for them to stay in the race. I'm sure he will. Yeah. I don't think this is anything long term. I do think they'll make a move or two. I think they would look to get just some sort of fill-in veteran defenseman. Tommy Albelin isn't available to be called anymore to just sort of come over and play like Mike Fisher's doing. But if he was, he'd be a good fill-in there, like a guy like that. And then as far as a forward, I think they're looking for like a third-line guy. I think they would be willing to do that to trade for some futures, maybe not picks, but some players that they have. They have guys like Blake Spears. They have some guys that are pretty close that if they feel like, hey, this is a year where the East isn't all that strong and all we got to worry about is Tampa, you might see the Devils jump in there.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to give up. Like, they're not – I mean, they could give up – they're not going to give up a Zacha. They're not going to give up – they'd probably be very hesitant to give up a Spears. They'd probably be hesitant to give up a Mike McLeod. But – you're going to have to give up something to get a player who will make a difference. That's why I think it
would be Spears. I don't think McLeod's going anywhere.
Right. I mean, McLeod was a first-round pick, so and Spears has shown some promise. So you have to give up something to get something, obviously.
All right. HD. And this is, I don't know, is that like HD, like is an HD TV? Like, are you
Mr. High Def? Go ahead.
Was your grandfather low def? LD. What do you think Antoine Vermette's value would be as a rental? I'm of the mind that the Ducks should get rid of him and backfill with any of their forwards. They don't have any forwards that are worthy to backfill. And Antoine Vermette can win faceoffs no matter what you do.
They will not.
They will in the playoffs, man.
Yeah, they will not get rid of Antoine Vermette. He'll be their if he's because he can play center or he can play the wing. I'm not sure what they're doing with him right now, but he's out there in the last few minutes of regulation, up by a goal in the playoffs, having him as the second faceoff guy. Yeah, no, they're not getting rid of him. In fact, I think Anaheim will probably. I mean, Anaheim right now, looking at the standings, and we have to look at the standings because yesterday we said that we talked about the Islanders and they were tied for 8th place, but they lost to Buffalo, so that emphasizes where I think they are right now. The Anaheim Ducks are at 62 points. The bottom wild card is 64, and so is 3rd place in the Pacific at 64. So they're in playoff competition, and they're probably going to look for their defense is really good. The thing that's right now got to be a concern to them is Gibson keeps getting hurt, and they had to rely on Ryan Miller going back-to-back nights against Toronto and Buffalo. Yeah. And he, for a guy in his mid-30s, that's they didn't want to go to Red O'Bara in one of the games, so they went Miller back-to-back, and he got lit up against Toronto, but they ended up winning against Buffalo. So they need Gibson back to be able to split the time at least, and then they need Gibson in the playoffs because we saw last year when losing him and going to Jonathan Bernier what that meant. That meant not going to the Stanley Cup final.
They do. Couple more. Russ, what do you think of Gillies? Well, I hate him, but he did take Eddie Feiner deep at Eisenhower Park in the 70s in a charity softball game. So Clark Gillies. He just wrote Gillies. So I'm giving you my answer for Clark Gillies. But he means John Gillies because it's Randy. And I like John Gillies a lot. I think he is a potential starter in the league. He's had a hip surgery, so that's why they're bringing him along slowly here. And they do have Mike Smith, and so that's why they are bringing him along slowly. And it's a perfect situation for him. I watched him practicing with the club early in the year, and he was getting a lot of tutelage from them, and they have some good goaltending consultants over in Calgary. I like the way it's going for him, and I think in 2 years he will be their starter, not next year, but the year after.
Well, that very well could be, but the thing is, Calgary is looking for offensive help before the deadline. Their defense is stacked, but in the Hamonic deal, they traded a 1 and 2 2s. They're looking to make a deal to bring in some help before the deadline to make the playoffs, and they don't have a first. They don't have a extended pool of draft picks, but they do have prospects. They do have Shillington. They do have Gillies and Tyler Parsons in their pipeline. And I know that in one of the recent insider tradings on TSN, I think it was Darren Drager or Pierre LeBrun that said they're using Gillies and potentially Rittich, their backup right now, as the attractive piece to maybe acquire the help that they need. And if you think about it, he's in his early 20s. He's a big goaltender. He's got a lot of potential.
Oh, there's value there.
Yeah, there's value there. And for a team that is looking for their future number 1.
The only problem is that Parsons, just at the beginning of his AHL career, not having a great year, you're now risking it and rolling the dice when Mike Smith starts going bad that you have an answer. You might not have an answer at that point.
Right, and I don't know a lot about Rittich, but apparently he's played very well. And
yeah, but I don't think he's a long-term solution.
No, he's probably not, but I think right now they're just thinking about the backup situation.
Aaron Dell of this group, but less than that.
But if you do see Calgary making a move, I think it could be a Gillies or it could be one or two of their young defensemen. I mean, I'm sure people are going to be asking for Valimaki, but they're not going to get him probably because he was
They're not getting Valimaki. So here's another one from Mike Doyle. Russ, with the Pens playing better, do we think Rutherford will take his time making a trade? I do. I think this is the time he's not going to rush, and he's going to sort of wait and see what the weakness is in his team. Is there a last-minute injury? Is there a weakness that pops up in the next 17 days? I think Rutherford will be in on something, but I do think he's going to wait because I do think they're in a pretty good spot right now.
Well, this is and I just had an interview with Bill Waters, former assistant GM of the Leafs, and we were talking about the potential of the Leafs trading players, and one of the names that came up was Tyler Bozak, and Tyler Bozak has continued to be linked to the Penguins because the Penguins tried to fill their number 3 center position after losing Bonino with the Riley Sheehan deal, and that hasn't worked. And Bozak makes a whole ton of sense because he's an expiring contract. He's best buddies and former line mates with Kessel. That would basically be filling the third line spot with another Bonino. It would all depend on what Pittsburgh would be trading back to the Leafs, and I don't think the Leafs are not trading Bozak for a 4th round pick. They're trading. They would be asking for a Daniel Sprong, or they would be asking for a second, or at least a 2nd round pick, and maybe a 2019 first, and maybe that's excessive. But right now, you're looking at the fact that Pittsburgh has a chance to win 3 in a row, and this is the thing where you mortgage the future for the now. They might be, and the thing is, they might be able to recoup the draft pick that they trade in a deal for Bozak if they trade Ian Cole, because all the defensemen, the very few defensemen that are out there on the market. So I think Rutherford is going to be, Trader Jim like he's been in the last few years, and you could see something like that happen. But I don't know there aren't really that many centers out there past Mark Letestu and Thomas Buchanan's and a couple others. So, I mean, that's
you have to have that answer within and be able to flip somebody who's playing wing that could play center and then bring in a winger. That's probably the answer.
Or go out and get Matt Cullen again at 41 years old and bring him back or something like that, because he's not played a ton with Minnesota unless he's lost a step and he's just done.
No, but they're still a playoff team. They're not going to get rid of him, because that's the idea, is you want to probably have him for that. So the last one is, Mike, do you think the Leafs will make a move? And my answer is, I'll hang up and listen.
Do I think the Leafs will make a move? Yes, I do. But this is that's an overly general question. The thing is, where I'm in, and this is something that we discussed on the.
So you're ripping the chat room for the question now?
No.
It sounds like you are.
No, I'm just saying it's an overly general question because it gives me the ability to go any way here. But I'm going to play both ends here. It's like, I don't know what the decision that's being made by the Leafs before February 26th, whether it's going to be we're going to add players and think we're a legitimate contender, which I don't think that they are. And I'm going to write about this a little later on. They're facing what I call the Atlantic Wall. That's a historical reference, and but in this instance, it's Boston and Tampa. They're the Atlantic Wall. These are 2 teams that I don't think they match up well against. They had beaten Boston 6 games in a row, but then they played Boston less than 2 weeks ago and were shut down by them. And Tampa, they've only played once this year, and Tampa shut them down. I don't think they match up well against them because they're young, because their defense isn't very good. I think their goaltending is good. Freddie Anderson's had a great year. But if Brendan Shanahan and Lou Lamoriello are of that mindset, then there's a distinct possibility they could trade James Van Riemsdyk and they could trade Tyler Bozak. Mike Babcock would probably go apoplectic if that happened, but I'm not sure how realistic they believe it is to get by one of those teams and to go on a deep and long run. And you've got a lot of young players here that will be around in 2 or 3 years. So, that's why if they go that direction, then they trade Van Riemsdyk and they trade Bozak for young assets. If they go with the way Babcock wants them to go, then it's another Brian Boyle deal. Then they trade a 2nd round pick for Erica Branson, or they trade for a 4th line center like a Letestu or something of that nature. I think that would be just dumb, but it's very possible that they'll do it because, Babcock wants them to compete, and maybe he thinks they would have a chance to beat Boston or Tampa, but I've yet to be convinced that they can do that. But we'll see.
Last thing is breaking news. Thomas lets us know that Vinny Lecavier's number 4 is being raised to the rafters by the Lightning on Saturday. I covered that Tampa Stanley Cup. I actually got to lift the cup in the locker room.
Wow.
During Game 7. The radio guys gave it to me because they said, hey, you've been here for this. You could be a part of this. And I thought that was cool. And I felt like I wasn't jinxing anything for any other team if I did it. So I took part in it, and it was great. He's a great guy. He handled things well in Philly.
Yes.
He's a very classy guy. He got ripped for a while for being the first overall pick and not producing. And then all of a sudden he started producing when the league changed. It wasn't Vinny's fault. It was all the clutching and grabbing because he was more of a finesse guy than a power guy. And so good for him. Great guy. I think that'll be a really good night. And maybe, John Tortorella will send in a tape message. We'll see.
And I still remember the story of that I was told by, I can't remember who told it, but I've heard it from other people too. And when LeCavier was struggling in Tampa, there was talk about him being traded to Toronto. There was talk between, I think Rick Dudley was the GM at that point, and I think it was Pat Quinn in Toronto, and they had a deal worked out, and Dudley went to ownership, and ownership nixed it. So
what do you think, Mike? What's the odds that Torts sends in a tape message for Vinny? Come on.
I won't. The odds about 1,000 to 1.
But here's the thing. If you're Tampa, shouldn't you have scheduled it for a Blue Jackets game so Torts could have been there for that?
Right? I guess.
Ideally, if you could, maybe Vinny had something going on. But that, to me, would have been the best way.
Unless they knew that the reaction wouldn't be positive from his former coach.
But he won a cup for him. It has to be positive.
Yeah, you never know. Okay. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.